Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We are here for episode number 11 for Logos Roundtable. Pedo Victim Speaks Out, Sex Addiction, and Homosexuality. Boy, we already have a lot of trolls in the chat and everything, thumbing down the show before we've even started it. How do you thumb down a show you haven't even seen? That's pretty retarded, but so are trolls. So,
Titles.
Welcome to the show. We have Caleb Thomas with us tonight. We also are joined by Marc Jantzen, and Stephen Sorensen is supposed to be here, but he's having computer trouble and having trouble getting his audio and video going. He was in here a few minutes ago, not sure what happened to him, but anyway, we have a lot of information to cover. We have a very interesting show. A pretty disturbing topic tonight. Marc was a victim of pedophiles from age 8 into his teen years and dramatically impacted his life and the direction of he's taken through life. This is a subject that we've wanted to cover for at least a few months now, and I was speaking to someone else to potentially interview on this subject that didn't work out, but Marc reached out to me recently in the chat, actually, during the show, and said that he would be willing to discuss it. You know what? Are we getting the feed going? Are you seeing the feed? Are you guys seeing the video feed? Anyone?
Yeah,
I can see you.
Okay, there
and
we go.
probably
Sorry.
half myself.
All right, there we go. Sorry, folks. All right. Now it's going. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, it should be fixed and working. I don't know why it tripped out
You're
there.
centered. Yeah,
all right.
Perfect now.
Cool. All right, we got it. So anyway, yeah, YouTube wasn't showing the feed there. But, so we have a lot of stuff to lay out, and we want to dig in. Obviously, this is a very controversial subject, and we almost titled it pedophilia and how it, something to the effect of creating homosexuality. So anyway, Marc, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Jan.
So let's see. We've got quite a few things to cover. And then we're also, Caleb's got a lot of statistical bits and information that he's dug up to go into. We've got some information from the Bible. Now, you've been working for years to become a Christian and to sort of resist your homosexual urges and whatnot, and you go to church regularly. Why don't you start out, Marc, by talking about your, what happened to you as a young child?
It's a huge story. It leads into a lot of other areas as well, which we can't go into, take forever. But essentially, I was seeking a fatherly love that I was not feeling from my own stepfather. Many, many men who are living today have been through very similar to myself. But the machinations of this was that opportunistic pedophiles can see this in children. They can take advantage of this. And during the 70s, it was sort of like a free opening sort of lifestyle. The nudist families, and it would go to, places and they'd all get naked in front of each other. None of the pedophilia happened there, right? That was all wholesome family sort of stuff, that I was aware of anyway. Where it happened to me was when my friends and I, we were, out everywhere. Think Stephen King, Stand By Me, and, childhood friends all together everywhere, going everywhere. We would sort of emulate this, getting naked and that down the beach and, run along the dunes and all that sort of stuff. And in amongst them would be nude sunbakers, men, women, and occasionally we'd come across them. And some of these people would talk to us as children sexually. Which was odd, for us. We always thought that was really odd, and we kept on going and, all that sort of stuff. And we had been exposed to this. Later on, other pedophiles that were by themselves. See, it happened to me when I wasn't with my group of friends. It was when I was on my own. because sometimes I would go out on my own and do stuff by myself and explore here and explore there, you know. And they would appeal to me. They would come and they would talk to me in such a kind way and offer you things, like lollies, fruit, to listen to their cassette, Walkman radio thing that they had back then. All those sort of things appealed to me, and they treated me in such a different fashion to what my stepfather was. I mean, he was strong, he was disciplinary, and he really cared for us and our family. He was under stresses. There were many things. I can't fault him for wanting to be the alpha male father. Not at all, not one bit. It just, the society situation at the time, families not communicating well, problems between him and my mother, the distraction of my mother being pregnant with my sister at the time. So I was pretty much on my own and got caught up with the pedophiles. They didn't make
basically
me do
you were lacking fatherly alpha male leadership, so you basically sort of went seeking it, and and of course predator pedophiles were ever ready to provide.
Absolutely, in a nutshell. And in doing that, it switched something on in me. It's, if you want to get all new agey, it switched on my sixth chakra, like my sex chakra, at the age of 8. Come on, like, we're not meant to know this stuff, not until we get into our teens. And yet sex education is proliferant in the schools now. And, even back then, I think in grade 5, would have been, 10, we started having sex education in the halls in our what you call elementary school, and this was repeated again later on when we were about 15 in high school, but with a much more biological, scientific approach. It was only rudimentarily covered in elementary school. But these guys really did got into my head, and shaped the way at that age, and shaped the way I view myself, manhood, sexuality, everything. It was all a clusterfuck in the mind that just really took me up until about 33 to realize. For a long time, I didn't think I was abused by pedophiles. I didn't see this as pedophilia. I really didn't. And here I was thinking that, okay, I must be gay. They're saying that, when you are attracted that sort of way to a man, or can, gratify sexually another male, that you must be gay, and for a long time I've been going along with it and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of ways to deal with it was to, dive head first into suggestions, in a way. It's sort of like self-medicating, but without guidance, without tutelage, it's futile. You just end up damaging yourself, possibly even, damaging yourself even further than what the pedophiles have done. There's no framework or structure to attempt to repair this. I've seen these homosexual conversion things, and some of it can be quite brutal. But a lot of it is people just not being totally honest with themselves. And yeah, at the moment, it's very hard for me to still walk away and put it down. It really is probably the strongest addiction I have. I've been able to shirk all the drugs, shirk all the bad food, shirk all the bad movies and all the bad premises and all the twisted ways of thinking about things, and bringing it back to truth, using what you and Gino Denning have given to us again, the people who are trying to seek truth, right, that may have had their trivium given to them, but in reverse order or broken up in an abstract sort of way, not in a holistic way where what's going on. That at school, at grammar school, this is where you're going to learn how you say everything, how it's spelt, how it's put together. Then you go out there and, like your mechanics analogy there, you've got all the parts, you've got your manual, and then rhetoric. You learn each part, master it, and then you can speak. But we don't do this. We throw so much more crap on kids, so that they can't learn to speak properly, can't learn to communicate properly, that they sort of have it, but they sort of don't have it. Unless you come from a private school or a rich family, you don't get this trivium instilled into your mind very well. And so that's what I've appreciated mostly, what I got from Gnostic media, tops, real good stuff there. And Logos media
now, yeah.
yeah. And Logos media now is even stronger in the Christian, faith. And it's like, you're turning around and saying, hey guys, what are you doing? Where are you sheepdogs? Why are you not, what's got your attention? And too much crap on television, too much war on television, and no one's talking about the effect, but no one's talking about the cause. And what your channel does is bring people to the causes and the very real aspects of the explosion of our Christian family structures. I come from European background, Germanic, Roman, not that I know the Italian side of me. I was raised in a Germanic family. And yeah, we were just trying to keep it together, and all these new things, divorce, this, that, all coming in at the family. And yeah, it's a hard thing on the families. And I'm surprised we've even survived this long. It's only been the last century that all this shitstorm has hit us.
Yeah.
And,
so let me interrupt you here.
Oh yeah, bringing it back. I'm starting to.
So you started reading the Bible at 6 years old. Is that correct? Your stepfather.
My stepfather brought it to me. There was a schism. What had happened was my mother's best friend had told me he was not my biological father, and all the memories of being abused came back to me, and a deep resentment of that abuse, and it ruined it. It was too much information for my childhood mind at the age of 5.5 to comprehend, because I was crying at her. She said, "Don't worry, honey, he's not your real father." And it was like, what? So I'd stormed to my mother and demanded an answer, and my grandmother and Alma and mother were looking at each other, and and they're sort of trying to frantically come up with some sort of answer, and so they eventually had to tell me that I did have another father, and they were trying to tell me the situation so that I could comprehend. And I sort of did. And they sort of said, but he does love you. And I do get that. I did feel that. There was a lot of youthful stuff there, but that bombshell in my mind was weird. And that actually is what made partly the acceptance from the pedophiles as well. It goes to that as well, without going into deep psychological analysis. And, we can piss Freud off because, wanker, cocaine addict, whatever. I like, personally, Carl Gustav Jung. He's a good Christian man. He's trying to bring it back to the psychological breaks are actually our disjoint with our faith, our brokenness of our religion, and the contradictions it's having with the truth of it all. That's why I followed Jung, and in a way have sort of diagnosed what's been going on with myself. Coming back to and getting the trivium sort of thrust in my face from, Gnostic / Logos media has made it easier for me to get these things in my mind, and come to a truthful understanding. And the more truthful I become, the more ostracized I'm making myself from the homosexual community, my church, just people around me that just don't want to talk in truth ever. They want to talk about the latest TV show, or whose booty's getting this, or what tattoo they've got recently. It's just, oh God, I'm surrounded by buffoons. Can we have real discussions?
For sure.
And we don't get it.
So these pedophiles, when you were going to the beach, you mentioned that some of them were in the 16 to 20 age group, and then there were older men involved with it. That it would approach you. Basically, they would, give you appeals to sympathy and appeals to flattery and whatnot. Would you talk about
Exactly.
that?
Yeah. The older gentlemen, the ones that were adult males.
And can you tip your camera down a little bit so not so much sky showing up there? There you go. Thank you. Not so much there. That's too, yeah, back up a little bit. Back up, up. That's fine right there. Sorry.
All right.
Don't go so far.
Anyway, so the certain generation, but the men that were older, they're in their 30s or 40s, they weren't vicious. They were super kind. And the 20-something-year-olds also not vicious, just weird. The vicious ones were pretty much the 17, 18, 19-year-old ones. They were the ones that introduced me to butt sex, and which I never liked. And yeah, they were the ones that were quite vicious. The older ones weren't as vicious. And in actual fact, it was the teenage ones in their viciousness that pushed me away from seeking out that sort of comfort again. I was back in my family. I was back at high school again. I'd not gone to church anymore, started doing other things. Had a girlfriend, then had another girlfriend at high school, got her pregnant. At this stage, the relationship with my father was getting even more tumultuous. He was abusing my mother mentally, not physically. He never abused her physically, but so much to the point that she would come out in like an anaphylactic reaction with welts just all over her from the stress that was happening between their dynamic. And it was very, very painful to see. And I would get really, really hostile towards him. The older I'd get, the more hostile I would get. And and then after getting the information that my future family was dashed because of the societal views at the time, that it was okay to murder our babies so that your education would still be sound. There was no channel for us to find a way to still keep our education, still work, and still raise a family. We didn't have the generational family really to do that. My generational family was fractured. We had grandparents, but they were isolationary. We had uncles and aunts that had huge families compared to ours. We were sort of like the quintessential nuclear family, which is not that healthy. We really do need generational families. We really do.
Yeah, where you have the aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents all involved, and if the parent needs to go off to work, but now they've fractured that to just a single mother, and then and this is especially damaging for boys because women think emotionally, and when that gets, programmed into male children, that emotional thinking, men are logical, women are emotional, so men who don't have that male role model end up spending their lives thinking emotionally and getting caught up in that, and it's, that women and men together make a balance, but, it's like in Africa when you see these male elephants, when they don't have a father elephant around them, they go into rampages and they get into all of this horrible behavior. And that's what we see with, humans as well. You have to have that father, that male influence to, especially an alpha male, to guide the child and the family. And so without that, you obviously, you went out to seek it and got caught up in activity and with men that weren't at all alpha males. They were entirely beta male predators, in fact, not leading.
And what's another horrible thing is that, sorry to interrupt there, is that there are other avenues for us to turn to, but they're sort of like almost closed off to us in a way. I'm looking at the pedophile priests now. Priests would have been another alternative father figure for me to turn to. Um, Thankfully, that hasn't happened to me, so that hasn't really shaked my faith in God or anything like that. To have a priest break your connection to God is even more horrific than what I've experienced. So my heart really does go out to all those men and women that have been tampered in such a way. Yeah, can you please continue on with what you were saying?
I don't even remember. You cut me off mid-sentence. So,
yeah, sorry.
anyway,
Yeah.
So where was your mom at when, how did this stuff happen? I mean, why wasn't your mother and your stepfather, why weren't they looking out for you? Because at 8 years old, you're probably in about second grade, maybe entering third grade. And being a father myself, I know an 8-year-old, a second grader, has no capacity yet for real thinking about this stuff. They don't even know what pedophilia and homosexuality is. All of this, transgender stuff that they're forcing on children in the media, they're just confusing the children that otherwise wouldn't even know these concepts yet. So they put this stuff into the kids who then, get mixed up and think, oh, well, I can be a girl even if I'm a boy. So anyway, where were your parents when this stuff was going on? And granted, you said you lived on the beach and you could just go out there. But, to me, if I lived at the beach and I saw all of these types of people going on as a parent, I would be hyper vigilant, not approaching this with the lack of vigilance.
Given the way the sand dune configuration was at the beach, and the sort of like the coastal restoration type plantings and all that sort of stuff that were going along there, it was quite easy back then. It's not the same now. I have revisited that area about 5 years ago. It has been cleaned up so that this pedophilic type behavior can be seen if it tries to take place there. But yeah, many parents couldn't see this. They wouldn't have seen this. And in a way, most parents who took their children to the beach and all that sort of thing were protective. They were around. In relation to where my parents were and my friends' parents, where were they? Mostly working. My mother was at that time heavily pregnant, and also after childbirth, looking after my younger sister. And their attention was distracted. It really was. They had their own faults. But as children in the 70s, we would just get on our bikes. We'd ride it around to each other. We only lived a few blocks away from each other. And being even in an urban environment, but that was very, very close to rural areas as well as the beach, yeah, we had a very, very large sort of like backyard, so to speak, to go out and play in. So, yeah, where they were was distracted with general family life. It can happen to everybody and anybody with the most simplest things. In a way that parents back then didn't feel that they had to wrap their children up in so much cotton wool. So, yeah, I can't fault them for not being there, really. It was just something that happened, happenstance that, this is odd. It really is odd. I can't fault my parents. I really can't blame them. I can't come at them and say, it was your fault. It really wasn't. It was just a cacophony of errors that just struck me, Thankfully, it sort of struck me, and I have got the strength to have worn this, to have been struck by this. I will get up, and I will not yield. I will not yield to being oppressed and pushed down on any level.
Yeah. Let's bring it back. So and people keep trying to derail the thread, and you got all these idiots in there talking about Bolsheviks, everything that's irrelevant. But one thing that I have mentioned on the show before that I want to mention right now, just to clear it up for all the people that keep going off topic and can't figure out what this show is about. I have interviewed Fiona Barnett. I never released the interview. In my opinion,
wow.
in my opinion, she is a fraud. Okay, and I've been making a pop-up video about it. It's like halfway done. It's just such a waste of time. The interview is so terrible. She couldn't keep on topic for anything, much less supply any evidence for anything. She creates a false Nazi witch hunt so that people go out looking for Nazi pedophiles rather than looking for real pedophiles. If any of you can't figure out that she's a fraud, in my opinion, excuse me, caveat, get your head together. Seriously. Stop derailing the thread. Keep it on topic. It's a really simple issue here. Anyway, sorry Mark. What I want to do is have Caleb go into some of the statistics and things that he's found here in a second. Before I do that, I want to... I'm going to hold off on that. I want to read some of the Bible quotes on homosexuality. That's a big thing that I want to go into. And you obviously do agree that homosexuality, and you being one, that it's against natural law, and you can see and understand that. And so, we're slowly going to get into some of that and how all of this has impacted your life. Now, one thing that you haven't discussed yet is, you know what? Let me just hold it there because I don't want to give any, too much good stuff away yet. So let's just toss it over to Caleb and let him go into some of his information first here.
All right. So, one thing that I've been interested in with my research into getting to the root cause of some of these issues that we're discussing here. We noticed a lot of patterns with pedophilia and these types of things. So I did as much research as I could trying to figure out, good arguments for and against homosexuality and different things that I've been researching. So, just as a caveat before I get into some of these questions that I have in this bullet point, yes, I am aware that the studies, you can find certain studies to be biased toward your outlook or whatever. That's not something that I'm doing. I'm completely open to all the material. I'm going to show a bunch of stuff that just take it for what you will. These are studies. I have all those citations. I'll definitely pass them along to anybody who wants to look further into them. These are just questions that I have that I want to ask the guest if he has any personal experience and what type of influence has had on him, if any of these questions have. I'll just get right into them real quick here. In no particular order, I got about 50 bullet points here. I'm going to try to get through them. Mark or Jan, if you want to stop me and talk about one of those specific things while I read through them, please do. I don't think it's going to take very much time to get through all of them. There's quite a few of them, but a lot of them are very similar with just a whole bunch of citations. So
no worries.
So anyways, just in no particular order, I'm going to start reading some of these things. So claims that gay parents are just as capable of raising children as straight parents are misinterpreted. Between 24% and 90% of lesbians report being psychologically abused by their partners. And every one of these that I have has a specific study, and I can provide the source of them for people who want to look more into them.
If we want, we can put it in the in the comments after the show or whatever, or in the show description if you want. If you want to send those to me, we can do that later.
Okay. Gay men are 60 times more likely to have HIV than straight men. 46% of male homosexuals report being molested, as compared to only 7% of heterosexual men. Gays are more likely than straight people to have a mental illness. One quarter of gay men in America have had over 1,000 sex partners. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
43% of gay men have over 500 partners. So one quarter has over, so that's 25% has had over 1,000. 43%, almost half, have at least had 500 partners.
Let me interrupt you there. Now, one thing that we haven't brought up yet is that Mark, and I hope you don't mind me mentioning it, you do have HIV. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I had no qualms about that. And I put Duesberg's words to the test. It was an interesting book to read. It was sort of like when I was still trying to get, I'm still not great. I'm hoping my trivium strength increases as I go on. But back then, it still wasn't that strong. And I was speed reading a lot of stuff. And,
Yeah.
And I skimmed through it. And whilst I can follow the drive,
let's not go too far into Duesberg's
no,
work.
I won't. I'll quickly sum it up. But suffice it to say, had I actually used the trivium a little bit more, I wouldn't have actually completely gone the way about it I did. I basically nearly killed myself. But I had to be sure, and I had to be doubly sure. So yeah, I'm HIV positive. It was. I'm not entirely sure whether it was the drug addiction or the sex that gave it to me. But, I had an inkling back when I was a kid learning about this in high school as, through sex education as a disease. Something in the back of my mind said, you're going to get that. And because I was equating about it, because I was saying it was mainly homosexuals, and I was, as a teenager, flipping between the poles between, hetero and homo, and something in my mind said you're going to get that.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
pass it back over.
Moving
to,
on.
Yeah,
moving on. Yeah, go on, Caleb.
Well, Mark has a habit of he likes to go into long segues. So we talked about this before the show, and we're just going to reel him in. So that's all right. But Caleb has a lot to go through here. So let's get back to Caleb.
Yeah, I just want to get through these, and then we can, I'd like to know what you think about these and so on and so forth. But let me just try to get through a couple more here. Gay men are 6 times more likely to commit suicide than straight men. Gay men are 12 times more likely to use amphetamines than straight men.
Oh, absolutely. It's still rife now. It's it's even worse.
Yeah, hold on. Let's let him keep going here.
Yep, go
on. Well, see, the thing is, a lot of them are similar. So once I get through them, we can address a bunch more. Gay men are 10 times more likely to use heroin than straight men.
Don't touch the stuff, so I wouldn't know.
Liberal arguments in favor of homosexuality are based on logical fallacies. And this is a whole study that they did. And, just real quick, I'll mention, I have another question at the end of this that addresses this specific question. I'll wait to ask that. 10 to 15% of older homosexuals have had over 1,000 sex partners. Gay people are 2 to 3 times more likely to abuse alcohol than straight people. Up to 50% of lesbians report sexual abuse. That's a lot, 50%. 79% of homosexual men say over half of their sex partners are strangers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
In actual fact, there's a lot of people that don't want to take on or get to know the person before, copulating or whatever they want to call it.
Yeah.
They just want the anonymousness of it all. And to be quite honest, that's how you get those really, really high numbers of sex partners.
Now, do you mind us asking how many sexual partners you've had?
Oh, a few hundred, but I would, yeah.
A few hundred.
Because when you're on suggestions, right, and you're not in the right mind, amphetamine, and when it's ice, it's even worse. Oh God. I can't express how dirty this drug is. This is an abomination of, of mass proportions. It is going to destroy our communities, literally. The rural community here in Australia is rife with it, not just homosexuality, straight people too. And it's frightening. I've seen so many families being destroyed by this, but we're segueing again, so let's bring it back. Can you refresh me again, please, Jan or Caleb?
Well, go ahead, Caleb. I was just asking you how many partners you've had, and you said several hundred. So, at least 300, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. But actual people that I considered partners, when I was in my right mind, 4.
Wow.
4.
And that includes one woman, correct?
2.
2. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
When you were 16, you and your girlfriend, well, and that's another thing that dramatically impacted you is your girlfriend got pregnant and then she had an abortion, and then you felt the rejection. That's essentially an abortion is the ultimate rejection by a woman, where she's stating that her womb is not worthy of your seed. So it's the literal ultimate rejection a man can have. And so,
And you're right there.
So, what happens is, you at that point psychologically, you had already had that bonding with men from the time you were 8. So when she did that ultimate rejection of you, you went, well, fine, I'm just going to go back to that other behavior where I felt more love, rather than, alphaing up and saying, I'm just going to go find another woman, right?
Yeah. And you know what the real kicker was a year later, she got pregnant to one of my other high school chums and kept the baby.
Oh, no.
So it was an absolute rejection of me.
So it was a double, she double slapped you, in fact.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. I'm sorry to hear that, and these days, and women who go around doing this stuff, they don't realize what a rejection, an abortion is to the men. And men, because they're so programmed with all of the CIA, Gloria Steinem, feminist crap out there, they just, they accept it and they think it's normal. Oh, well, okay, well, she killed a human life. Well, that's okay. No, it's not. It's murder. It's murder. Anyway, Caleb, let me pass it back over to you so we can go through some more of these stats here.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Where are we at? 98% of lesbian, gay, and bisexual teens will change their sexual orientation within 13 years. That's a very interesting one right there.
It is, because during those years, it's still a flip between where are we going? Who am I? And with all this, quite frankly, crap in the media and the distraction industry, we're all being led down a merry path that this is all okay. And it's psychologically damaging us, spiritually damaging us, physically damaging us. And this is all okay. And nobody really wants to speak about it. And when we do, we get an expose on TV and then it's shunted away and they never revisit it, and then the next one comes on and, it's similar to that person, but now it's a different perspective. And yet we're still not talking about it. It's quite frankly
that too, but
upsetting.
I'm a little more interested that as well, but I'm more interested in the fact that most arguments, if I'm just going to go start talking to people, everyday people, interview them and ask them, a lot of questions about why they chose to be gay or lesbian or bisexual or whatever, they'll usually give you an argument that they were born that way. and that's, I just find that interesting that 99.8% of them will change their sexual orientation within 13 years. And of course, that's the official number that has been, given up voluntarily through these studies and stuff like that, of course. But nevertheless, I think that's an interesting thing. What do you think about, I might as well ask you that since I kind of already said this. What do you think about the whole...
That very question has so many ways it can go, because it does speak to so many dastardly things like eugenics, et cetera, et cetera. I do believe that there is this very, very slim amount of homosexuals that are born, right? Whether this is a natural process as a natural population control, I have no idea. Still requires for me a lot more research and a lot more running through the trivium before I can.
To interrupt you, I think it's entirely based on your own agency, and you and I talked about that the other day.
We have,
too. And you see the point of agency as well in it all.
I do. Absolutely, absolutely. This is why I have to speak out.
And
it's too
and
much.
let me just ask you on that point, Mark, and then I do want Caleb to go through more of his statistics there. Why do you think that you are strong enough now to stand up as Marc Jantzen and tell the truth about this, because, I don't hear other homosexuals standing up and talking about this.
Logos. In a word, logos.
All right.
When you guys showed me and reignited that aspect of my Christianity, that it was just, yeah, I'm still having to go through those 5 pages of translations, and absorb them and bring them into me, because that's all I want to do now. I don't want to follow these lies of the Western world. It's just that we're being led down the merry path. I want to speak in truth. I want to walk the path of truth. And that is harsh. Truth can, when you're covering yourself in lies and the lies can't hold up, they just fall away. They just start to fall away. And to be quite honest, I will probably in the future get the inklings and need that man gratification that, I've been getting most of my life. I most likely will get there again and probably hate myself for it. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know.
You're currently not sexually active, but you have a male partner. Is that correct?
Yeah. I have a life partner. He's 60. I'm 47. We're in a loving relationship.
But you're not currently sexually
No.
active?
No. And even when we were, it wasn't, like all that kinky stuff or anything like that. It was, just mutual gratification, essentially. So yeah, not
right.
one will take the woman's role or one will take the man. There's nothing like that.
Right. Well, let's pass it back over to Caleb, because I know he's got a lot of material there.
Yeah, we're getting through them. Let's see. 2/3 of men and women who are homosexual change their orientation to heterosexual within 5 years. That's a PsychNet study. Let's see. 2/3 of self-identified lesbians later have heterosexual relationships. 2/3. Identifying as a lesbian, gay, or bisexual does not end sexual questioning or confusion.
Never.
That will.
It's always going on.
I have a question about that, a little bit of philosophy on that at the end of this. 1 in 8 gay men in London has HIV. Gay men are twice as likely as straight men to be in interracial relationships. In Australia, 25% of homosexuals have had more than 100 sex partners. So it's not as bad in Australia as it is in America. Let's see. Gay men, who are 1.65% of the U.S. population, account for 63% of the country's syphilis cases.
Wow.
Yeah, it's true. And syphilis may be a tough one to get rid of. There's a thing called the microbiome in the human body, and it can hide out in there and strike you again later. It has done for many people. They think they've gone, like, I had it once, and then all of a sudden I had it again, and it was like, well, hang on, I haven't had any sex partners for ages. Why is it showing up? And I did research, and that could be a possibility. But there's also the possibility that there's new virulent strains that you can even get from just being touched. So, yeah, that's really freaky too. There's another reason to stay away from all that kinky sex. So,
Yes, sir. In 2010, homosexuals were 200 times more likely than everyone else to be diagnosed with HIV. So, some of these sound repetitive. These are different articles and different sources that I've sourced that the source took and did a whole, comprehensive study with all the sources that you can gather data on. Let's see. Gay men are 15 times more likely to have hepatitis B than everybody else. Homosexuals are more likely to use illegal drugs and drink to access than straight people. Different source says the same thing. Homosexuals are more likely than straight people to have anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, and commit suicide. And this is there's a few different studies on this.
You don't apparently disagree with any of this from what I see by the look on your face there, Mark.
No, I'm actually reading some of the comments on my other computer screen.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead.
In the chat. I'm still listening. I really am still listening.
But
Caleb.
you're not.
Sorry.
I'm just saying you don't seem to disagree with anything that he's reading here.
Oh, there are a few points, but being polite, I'm going to let him speak, and
all right.
then I'll come and speak a bit to that later. I might lose a few points. All
right.
But,
let's let Mark or Caleb go through again.
Yeah.
Keep going.
If you just need to write one of them down, jot one of them down, make a little note.
That's what I forgot to grab as a pen.
Let's see.
Well, you got a computer in front of you. Just pull up a text document and type it in.
So gay men are 10 to 15 times more likely than straight men to have eating disorders.
I'm not sure about that.
We're just, we're just beginning to see a trend here, and that's kind of just what this is all about. 40 to 60% of serial killers are homosexuals. Take from that.
Yeah, I could have gone that way. I really could have twisted that way. Had I not had a Christian upbringing, I probably could have been a killer.
Yeah, just real quick, I remember you mentioning something about how, the pedophilia, the trauma that you experience when you're young could play a large role in the development of your, idea of what is healthy sexually in your mind. And you were talking about how demons and different things that you were battling with that you thought that was inside your head. You had, I don't remember exactly what you were saying about that. Do you just mention that?
It's almost like all the negativity. Well, actually, it's almost like the appeals that draw you to the negative actions in life are the demons, and the appeals that draw you to the good aspects of life are our angels. And I've created a little hell in my mind and put all that negativity in there. But sometimes when the emotions get so heavy and overwhelming, it's almost like that cage is going to break open and that evil will spill out and consume me. It's a really big, scary thought on a spiritual level.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, we'll just move along here a little bit. Homosexual men are more likely to have been abused by their parents than straight men. Monogamy is not a central feature of most homosexual relationships.
Exactly. It's not.
It's
being taught.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's not a default aspect.
Gotcha.
Monogamy is not a default aspect.
Gotcha.
It really requires a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does, for sure. That's why we tend to see monogamy and pair bonding in the K type of genetic survival strategy rather than the R.
Rather than the R, yeah.
So let's see. Married homosexual men are 50% more likely than straight couples to divorce.
Not sure. We only just got the marriage here in Australia, which I don't agree with. That's another show if you really want.
No, we can talk about the whole marriage thing a little bit later and all that stuff.
Yeah, and you disagree with gay marriage, is that correct?
As being part of the church being forced to accept our relationships and marry us. Yeah, we've always had under law the same rights as everybody else. You just know how to use the law. Seriously,
just use a contract. You don't have to corrupt a sacred.
Exactly. Well, the marriage is a contract anyway, but it's a contract between church, state, and
then a marriage covenant is between the husband, the wife, and God.
Yeah, exactly. This is why it's all done before God in the church. I mean, if we want to do it before God as well, but not call it marriage.
And when we say before God, that's meaning any contract that's made before two witnesses and done in natural law, that's a covenant before God.
Yeah. Well, it's a covenant before God to procreate in an honorable way, to raise your children, with that meekness, to have that alpha male, to have that balance in family. It's just evaporated in mine. So, yeah.
Okay. I'll keep
It was
going.
sort of there, but broken. Let's move forward. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, we're getting close to being done here. Let's see. In the Netherlands, the average homosexual in a steady relationship has 7 to 8 affairs per year.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
It's Amsterdam area, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, that's the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Where they have the legal heroin and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
The red light.
But you know what? I must admire that from Amsterdam's point of view, making it legal, but strictly keeping it in a certain zone, right? In that zone, if you're outside of that zone and you're on these things, you get the full weight of the law just whacked on the head. You know,
Yeah,
you can do that stuff there.
Let's try to pull it back here. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Caleb.
I know. We'll digress. I'm sorry.
So over 20% of older homosexuals have had more than 500 different sex partners. Like I said, this is a completely different article, even though it correlates very strongly with the other sources and studies that I'm talking about. 28% of homosexuals have had sex with over 100 men. For straight men, just 25% have had sex with 10 women. That's a big difference. The average gay man has had several dozen sex partners per year, different source, same results. Most long-term relationships between gay men last less than 8 years. Among Canadian men in committed relationships, only 25% were monogamous. In one study, only 9% of gay men were monogamous. 75% of straight men are in a faithful relationship compared to just 4.5% of gay men.
Well, I've been in a relationship for 21 years. And the early part of that, yeah, I was a schmuck. I was going out looking for, stuff on the side type thing, never really successful with it. And yeah. And
so, but you would say
to an understanding and a deeper comprehension of each other, and it's been pretty cool for the last 15 years, 16 years. So
nice. Well, but so from your experience, would you say that you are the exception, not the rule?
No, a handful of other people like myself that have been in relationships just as long or if not longer. And also I won't give names or anything like that, but their relationships were sort of a bit cheating at the beginning, but then it sort of settled down and came on. It's not common. It's not that common. I'm hoping that, it can become more common. I really would like to see people that are afflicted like this that need to be, because they might not be able to make that holistic family again, but at least have some companion for the rest of their life, but do it honorably. Mm. Don't cheat on each other. Don't, bring diseases to your spouse if you've gone out and cheated. There's something that many people don't think about. Yeah, and this is on both, sexualities. But as far as homosexuality goes, no, this is really rare. My relationship is a rare one, and and I thank God that I have this. It does give me the strength to even today be able to talk with competence and do so truthfully.
Yeah.
Without that relationship, I would probably be a flighty idiot. Probably still be drug addicted. It was my rock. It became a rock.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, let's see.
So they're not totally bad. I'm not saying that all homosexual relationships are great either. There's some pretty nasty relationships out there. You were saying earlier about the abuse from lesbian women upon the lesbian women, and yeah.
That's like
and I've seen it in action.
It's significantly higher with lesbians than with normal straight couples, and and that's the big lie of the feminist lesbian community. They like to hide that, but that information is out there. Go ahead, Caleb.
Okay. In Berlin, 83% of gay men in steady relationships had frequent affairs within the last year from this source. Infection rates for gonorrhea and chlamydia are increasing among active men. This is from AmericanThinker.com study. Gay men, 1% of the population, account for 83% of syphilis cases. That's from AmericanThinker.com. Syphilis was almost eradicated, but made a comeback amongst homosexual men. Active homosexual men are 17 times more likely than straight people to have anal cancer.
You know, a lot of these statistics are actually coming out since the 60s, since the counterculture that Jan's exposed, et cetera, et cetera. Since these little, pardon the term, and, you know, maybe I should swear in German instead of English. You know, these assholes have basically said to our community, yeah, peace, love, fuck yourself to death. You know, it's like, come on. Wake up, people.
So you're right. When I'm done with this, I'm going to ask you a question about that.
Yeah, sure.
Specifically.
Sure.
So lesbians are 2.5 times more likely than straight women to be obese.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's because of their obesity and lack of a good diet that, you know, they get enough rejection from men that they turn to women and they take on that whole feminist veil because of the rejection. So then men are to blame for them not taking responsibility for their diet. But you see a lot of these women are just, you know, the lesbian women, many of them are very atrocious looking.
Obesity in itself is a separate thing. We're being told to accept that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Anything that promotes the lack of self-responsibility, that's what they're promoting right now.
It appears so, yes.
Lesbians are twice as likely as straight women to have eating disorders. Lesbians are twice as likely as straight women to be stalked or physically abused by their partners. Twice.
Yes.
That's a lot. Married lesbians are 2 to 3 times more likely to divorce than straight couples. Homosexuals, lesbians, and transsexuals are poorer than straight people. Let's see, America has spent $700 million since 2015 promoting gay rights abroad, an integral part of American foreign policy. And that's a New York Times article. Okay, so, as I read through all of these different studies, just as an outsider looking in, we get these arguments for and against gay marriage and all these, and all these appeals to emotion is what I usually get in terms of, gay people should have the same amount of rights and all these different things. Well, okay, so if all these things are true, just from a objective standpoint, if these things are true, we probably shouldn't be normalizing it, should we? Do people still think we should allow it to be propped up and normalized more than, represented disproportionately in the media and the, in the entertainment industry and all these things as kind of just, oh, it's just a normal thing. And, so the question is, there are all these, if these are all negative things, I think anybody would agree. These are all bad things. If these are all the consequences to gay marriage, then is it a slippery slope? I know
this speaks to not just our community, but nearly every community. And again, I don't believe there is really a homosexual community. There's another misnomer there. They can delude themselves into thinking there is, but there's not really. I'll probably be shunned for it. But anyway,
I'm not sure I personally agree with you on that point, because normal society obviously doesn't partake in that, and we're not, involved in that
no one knows
type
what
of
to do with
behavior
it, so
that.
they're putting it out there over there, and it's its own community now, type thing. I don't believe that. I believe we are part of the broader community, and nobody knows how to integrate us that are broken, and if we can be repaired. I'm talking specifically to myself, how I feel that my set of circumstances has pushed me into this lifestyle, and that I've become complacent with, and able to keep walking with. I feel uncomfortable about that. I really do. I feel uncomfortable telling me that you were born this way, that you are this way, when I don't feel that's the case at all. And we've digressed off the original topic, haven't we, Caleb? What was that?
No, I'm glad you kind of went into that. I'm curious about these things, and you can give me a different perspective than I've heard from a lot of people. So, I don't mind you going into some of these things a little bit deeper. Another question that I have. So, if all these negative consequences, there's a lot of negative consequences that involve mental health. I'm wondering what you think about, is homosexuality, can it be put in a category of a mental disease or a disorder? Like, how gender dysphoria has been categorized, when people think that they're trans people think that they're a woman trapped in a man's body or whatever. And, you could, if you dig deep into it, you usually find that these people have all these things in common, which is abuse from a young age. I wonder if a lot of the
Not so much now, not so much the trans people becoming from abuse. The last decade or so has been pretty open about and sort of like
it's more SRI Tavistock social engineering and propaganda on that front, I think, with the LGBT QWERTY community.
Yeah, I know. If we could change our chromosomes, then I'd say, go for it. Go change your chromosomes, become XX. But for some reason, we just can't. We can cosmetically change the body to look however we want it to look. But actually getting the chromosomes to change, we haven't been able to do that. So we can't, in truth, say that a man has become a woman. We can say, in truth, a man has been shaped like a woman. And if that man feels that they are feminine mentally and spiritually.
What do you mean shaped like a woman? Because when women see the behavior of gay men, which is taking the worst attributes of women and hyper feminizing them and then pretending that they're like women and they should be accepted as women. But when you see, and I don't see you taking the hyper, homosexual feminine attitude and mentality and presentation that you see so often portrayed by gay men. But those are the worst possible attributes that could be considered of women, and then gay men adopt those.
Have been, had, do, and continually do. I mean, drag speaks to that aspect, flat in your face, straight in your face. I mean, many drag acts. And I used to do this. For a year or so, I donned on the female clothing, makeup, all that sort of stuff, jumped on stage, did all these acts and all that sort of stuff, mainly miming stuff. But the stand-up type one, drag queens and that, they became vicious. They were, quite frankly, disgusting. And, most people just go, ha, 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 and they're laughing at it, but they're not really with it. They're not really laughing with it. They're just laughing because they're in shock, that someone has just said something like that. And, they brought out all the worst aspects of female attributes and, portrayed it on stage. And then a lot of gay men start thinking that this is the character or that is acceptable to show to the world. This campness, this ha ha ha, isn't it funny? At times, it can be funny. You can make stupid comments and statements that will be hilarious and to the point and succinct.
Now I want to read a couple of comments here. Sorry, I gotta pull you back in here, but. Common sense philosophy says men are supposed to be principled, live in harmony with logos and truth. That's a very good point. Now, Martin said a minute ago, I hate it that sexual preference and deviance is a community and or identity. Thank you. And thank you for that. And also thank you for the $4.99 donation there. Also thank you to, I think it was Julia who made a donation as well. Thank you so much. By the way, those of you, we've only had like $25 in donations tonight. Please support the show. Wow, lots of haters in the thumbs down thing tonight. 14 thumbs down. Boy, they really don't like this topic. Even though they can't claim it's haters or whatever, it's probably homosexuals and trolls who are thumbing down the show, even though you're trying to expose what has happened in your own life. So I don't see how anybody could possibly thumb down this show except out of, through extreme ignorance and hatred. What?
May I interrupt for a second? There's a commenter, Angelo Caramosa, in the thing. Asked Mark, did he ever drink pissed like the majority of the fruits drew? Well, when you're pissed in our Aussie lingo, that means we're smashed, drunk. Yeah, we drink when we're, but if you're asking if I drank urine or anything like that, got into water sports and things, there's a whole section of hetero and homosexual sexual acts that are quite debauched, and, no, I avoided most of that. I'm not interested in that. I've come across people that did that. Yeah, it was pretty not fun. But so, yeah. So, Angelo, yeah, no, I haven't.
All right. Go ahead, Caleb. Let's bring it back on to your stuff.
Okay, so now, kind of summarizing here, the question that I have next for you is, so if we know that soy, plastics, and many other endocrine disruptors contribute to the unnatural feminization of men and masculinization of women, and you combine that with what we've figured out about pregnant women who eat an unhealthy diet, and they also will substitute soy milk formula for breast milk. Yeah, and we've learned all the negative impacts that can have on the endocrine system of the baby, and we know that the hormones play such a big role in when we talked about a little bit of hormone stuff in the alpha male stuff. It's like the more testosterone you have, you kind of get more male features, and you have a stronger sexual appetite, etc., and you're attracted to the opposite, which is the female, which is estrogen. Women with high estrogen, and you at least can generalize that a little bit, and you combine that with the fact that birth control. We've actually found, what is the drug called? I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's cyproteron, I believe is how you pronounce it. But that we found out that was a drug used by millions of women for birth control, and we found out that it was harming the male fetus in particular, even more so than the female in development, and strongly feminizing it. So the question that I have is, if we put all that together, the question becomes, would homosexuality occur without the outside influence of poor health, and then the promotion and normalization in pop culture, et cetera, which we know is as Jan mentioned earlier, is a psyop. There's a political agenda to push homosexuality. And you mentioned it earlier when you were talking about after the 70s. Well, it happened really hard whenever the Frankfurt School and the critical theory and all of that started taking over, and pushing the R-type curriculum in the schools and everything. And so we know that there's been psychological warfare on all fronts, and homosexuality seems to be involved in one of the main weaponized attacks on the family, like we've talked about before. So the question is, would it occur if you erased all those things? If you erase the promotion and the normalization in the pop culture, you take out a lot of the health factors and all
soy
that.
Soy and phytoestrogens, etc.
How much would we even be talking about it? Would it even be a problem?
It would be hardly on the radar. The number would be so small at that point, I think.
What do you think,
I
Mark?
think so.
And you have the normalization of it through, and we haven't even gotten into this yet, through pornography and all of this stuff. And I still have about 30 points to go into myself.
Yeah, well, okay, so I don't know if you want to go on any more of that, but that's the last question that I had was, could you say that when you look at natural law, would you say that homosexuality is against natural law? Is it an inversion? And if I've asked this question quite a few times to homosexuals that I've known throughout my life, not trying to attack them or anything. They obviously feel attacked answering these type of questions. But the problem is, if I'm a guy trying to get to the bottom of this, I'm really curious,
I think the answers are there. Sorry to cut you off, Caleb, but otherwise I might forget your point.
Go ahead.
In relation to it being against the natural order, it may be an indicator that our species is pushing ourselves against the natural order, that our species is making ourselves not in harmony with the world. And therefore, the more of us that are here, is the message is.
I don't agree with that. I think population has been on a massive decline for decades, but that's a whole other issue. It's like
the figures say 7.5 billion.
I know what the mainstream media and the UN and the globalists
and I'm just going
say.
by that.
I'm just saying, I've never gone around and fact checked that information. And when you have families having, less than 2 children, obviously every family needs 2.2 children just to keep things even. But for the last 30, 40 years, a lot of families are only having 1 child. And we see this across the board in Russia, the United States, Canada, Europe. We see these massive population drop-offs. I know what the UN, eugenicist, Brave New World, Huxley and Crapola out there says about population. I just don't buy into it, But anyway, and I want to swing this back around too. I've got a lot of points I still haven't gotten to here. And thanks, Anthony, for the $10 super chat. He says, could you please ask your guest if he is aware of how prevalent New Age influence is and the study of Kabbalah is within the gay community?
Many of them think they're all, experts, warlocks, this, that, we can sort of mind it. Look, when I was young, I sucked my nose into all of that sort of stuff. And in actual fact, I actively denied myself from practicing. Even though I studied it, I didn't practice. The hairs all over my body would just stand on end saying, if you go down here, there's no going back. So, especially if you take it from a negative point of view. So I thought better not to touch or to play with, just look and see first before you even attempt any of that. And so no, Anthony, I see it's prevalent. I see there are people attempting to practice this. Whether or not that's effectual on any level for them or on the broader scheme of things, I just think they're putting themselves more in the clutches of negativity by going down that path, definitely. It's very,
all right. So,
very scary.
So let's get into pornography. And you mentioned it briefly, but, how much does pornography impact the, what happened to you and your life decisions and the, homosexual community homosexuals as a whole?
It was a fascinating look when I view this and run it through my mind and go back in time to the first time I found pornography,
and you talk about the Zionists promoting this stuff, don't you?
Absolutely. Well, whoever they're manipulating is doing this. The whole porn industry. I mean, you just have to look who are the main makers. Where they're from, where's their money coming from, and that'll answer the question there. I don't even have to name names with that one. And when you go back in time and you look at all the publications and who published them, hello, they show their face again. So this has been around a while. But in as far as what porn has done, the way it came across for me, it was magazines strewn around of, and it was, again, left in places where children can find. not necessarily that they're wanting children to find it. It just was left where children can find. So I got my interest piqued in what's this all about type stuff with there. That's another thing that also allowed the pedophiles a little bit more access to me, because in viewing that smut and sort of reading what they were saying about it, it again turns on a child's sexuality well before its time. Yeah, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere on the internet. Yeah, you just have to ask for free gay porn in whatever search engine, and you'll get it. You'll get it.
We've got a lot of points to cover here. We're already an hour and 15 minutes in, so we're going to have to try to keep some of these answers as short as possible.
Tighter, yeah.
So talk about the shame that you've experienced as a gay white male.
What, the shame thrusted on me from the community, rather than the shame that I felt from within my own internal self?
He means the infighting that you got from the other LGBT.
Well, you know, and you were talking about the shame that you received when we talked a couple days ago. You know, the shame that you've experienced, and or you know, and even as a child when it first happened, what did you go through?
You know, you do. You know when you've done something wrong, there is a shame that's associated with it. For example, when you were just saying about the shame of the homosexuality when it first happened to me, it was there, but it sort of got somehow suppressed because of the good feeling that I had made some sort of connection with an elder male figure in a kindly, compassionate way. Had it been brutal or a different type of connection, it probably would have broke then and there, but it wasn't. So, but in me, I suppose it's soul searching. That feeling of shame at that moment afterwards, it was there. It really was, and I carried it. And every time I would hear the term "gay" and that, there would be a shame associated with it. This is not related to the pedophilia. This is just related to the term gay. And then I felt, after I found out that gay was men with men, the shame then started becoming equated with being gay. But it was really the shame of allowing myself to be in that situation, a child with a male in that situation. I've had that all my life.
Yeah.
I've tried to deal with that all my life from that perspective.
And, you know, and thanks for having the strength and courage to do this show. I mean, that can't be easy to stand up in front of everybody with, you know, I mean, obviously homosexuals, because of the association with pedophilia and disease and everything else, have long been shunned. And we can, you know, there's other theories that we can go into about the history of that, but it's too much for tonight. So, let's talk about the predatory aspects of homosexuality against children, you know, men against other men, etc.
All right, I've not viewed, I can speak to men against other men. I've not viewed men to children. If I did, that man probably wouldn't be alive. Yeah, I have viewed, I can speak of, you know, from my perspective, from, you know, being caught up in it with my personal experience with it, but not from an outside perspective there. But I can actually speak to an outside perspective from what I've witnessed other gay men and other relationships and how they go about it and what they've done. There is some evil in the world, and I've seen homosexuals perpetrate it. I've seen many people perpetrate it, but yeah. What specifically are you wanting to know about that? Can you be a little bit more specific in that, please, John?
Oh, you know, just the... Well, obviously you were a victim of, you know, predatory homosexuality, you know, which down the long, slippery slope that led you to today. I mean, you know, obviously if you had a proper father and alpha male role model, you wouldn't have been seeking the attention. Not only that, your parents would have kept you away from that stuff, you know. I
Oh
wouldn't.
yeah,
I wouldn't let
yeah.
my son
No
go out
parent
on
wants
the.
their child.
I wouldn't let my son go out on the beach with a bunch of naked men and stuff. You know, I would that would be an automatic red flag to me. You know, I've been in restaurants and seen, you know, men, you know, trying to be all weird and creepy with my son. And, you know, one time I was in this Mexican restaurant and this guy offered my son candy and saying, "Oh, I've got a nice bright yellow H2 sitting outside if you ever want to take a ride." And I almost stood up and beat the crap out of the guy, and he realized that I was clenching up my fist getting ready to take him down, and he quickly backed up and went out the door of the place. But, you know, it's just, you know, there's this whole predatory aspect to it, but that's all right. We can go on. I've got a lot more. Let's talk about, you know, how homosexuality is really, you know, and you've talked about it as an addiction as well. Let's talk about sex for gratification rather than for, you know, procreation and, you know, what a man and woman in in sacred holy matrimony would have.
Well, our entire society is highly sexualized now. Once upon a time, it wasn't, but it is now. Before, it used to be, you know, there were allusions to the sexual side of our nature in the old movies and TV shows, et cetera, et cetera. It was not as explicit as and in your face now. It's almost nearly everything has become a pornographic situation where they're showing relations in these shows, et cetera, et cetera. And this just fuels our addiction, our sex addiction. It makes it feel as if constant gratification is okay. You know, all right, yeah, gratification to release that sexual tension
Well,
is necessary.
if you read the Bible, it actually says you only have sex for procreation because of all of the problems and the demons and all of the stuff that come about from doing that, and it's very clearly against fornication.
Yeah,
Against
wise people.
right, you know, and so, you know, having sex for just sexual gratification, I'm going to say we shouldn't do, especially if you're not in a married straight relationship.
In any relationship, seriously, sex for gratificational sake is, you know, rather than procreation, it's like it really is an addiction for the entire race, for the entire species, sorry, for all sapiens. We are all addicted to sexual gratification. We may as well be bonobos. You know, and that's part of what our Christianity and, you know, Logos and walking with Christ consciousness and living in Christ consciousness is. It's a rejection of that base animalistic nature, you know, to live and to rise it up and live in a higher, you know, vibration. But no, all this bring us back down to our animalistic selves. And, you know, it's quite frankly abhorrent to me. I don't want to be, I want to strive. I want to rise. I don't want to coast. I don't want to float. I don't want to debase myself and keep going back down, just to have to frickety crawl myself back up the ladder each time I appeal to my animalistic self. I know it's there.
Yeah, well,
I know we are.
the natural man, and that's the whole idea. Is you're supposed to control yourself from the behavior of the natural man and stop acting in iniquity. You know, So anyway, we've kind of covered some of these. You know, we've covered conditioning of feminine traits, gender fluidity. We've kind of already discussed. Steve was supposed to talk about imprinting tonight, but he's not on. I don't know if Caleb remembers exactly his point on that. And so you said that you were not currently sexually active, though, correct, Mark?
Correct.
And then, so in the Kabbalah, the Kabbalists argue that there's 6 genders. Did you want to speak to that?
I can see that. I can see the gender. It's not sex. It's not X chromosome, Y, XXYY, XY chromosomes. This is gender. This is, yeah. So there are 6 genders. Yeah.
I don't agree with the actual genders, but go ahead and name them.
Well, the genders that I see them as, genders as I see them as, is just a coupling of the ways you can have gratificational sex. Essentially, you've got hetero, right? They'll call that a gender. You've got homo. They'll call that a gender.
Well, no, there's two genders. There's male and female, with 1 in 20,000 possibly
but are they
hermaphrodites.
conflating gender and sex?
No, that's
You know?
gender is your, what you're born with. You can't have, basically you have
Oh,
either
well,
a
then there's
penis or a
three. Then
vagina.
there's three.
Right. And then you have the LGBT QWERTY community that makes them up like, attack helicopters. I self-identify as a pickup truck or whatever the heck, And so you have all of this.
See, I mean, this is where they're putting all of it in one community.
Right.
All the things that the community can't deal with, they're throwing into another community and saying, it's not our problem. It's another community. They've got to figure it out, and it's like, hello, I'm just a man that was same attracted to man because of my circumstances in life. I don't want to be labeled with all you other people because you think that you're the same as me. No. I even hate even having to have these labels attached to us. We don't need it. I am a man. I have had these experiences. It's not what I label myself with. Yeah.
Okay. What would you say to young people whom are victims of pedophiles and considering a homosexual lifestyle?
Okay, this is one of the reasons why I did agree to do this show. If you're a young child and you're listening to your parents, or your parents are listening to this, and you're hearing this, and some older male or female has approached you and is giving you kindness and is asking you to sit on them in an inappropriate way, to rub them or stroke them or talk to them even in an inappropriate way, please go and find a strong family member and tell them this. Tell them, but don't make it up. Don't use it as an excuse to get an adult that you don't like, because that's just as bad. That's just as bad as pedophilia itself. The lie about it when it never occurred.
Right.
Just like the Holocaust, to lie about it when it never occurred.
Now, yeah, and you're gonna upset a lot of people if you speak that truth. But let's not go too far into that tonight. That's a whole.
Can I kick him in the
That's
butt?
a whole series onto its own. How do you deal with the contradiction of living in truth or logos and being a Christian with homosexuality?
Difficultly, very, very difficultly. It's not easy. It's when you want to live in truth, and for me, I hold absolute truth, which is God, above all else. It becomes difficult, and sometimes I wonder if I will have the strength to sustain it. Will I collapse? Can I do this? Can I just
why not just give it up entirely and go back to fully living in truth, and then you can just repent and let it go. And and I'm gonna read some Bible quotes here in a moment.
All right. That is an aspect to consider and to take the strength to walk down.
And you said the other day in our pre-call that the only reason why you haven't tried to go completely straight and have a family is because you have HIV. Is that correct?
Essentially, yes. How dare I try and create a family and put that family at risk before it's even started? Until they get a cure for this, there's no, unless there's a way to do it. And no, I don't want to create children without the natural copulation, one.
Right.
Two, so no test tube baby, even though it's possible. I don't want to create a baby with my male partner by ripping out the female genetics from the egg and putting in my male partner's genetics in replacement, and then having that made into a baby in, Franken baby. No, I don't want to go down that path, So I'm quite resigned in the fact that my path is pretty much fixed until things change. And even then, I'm starting to get a little long in the tooth. I'm nearly 50 to bring a child into the world before, by the time they're 21 and I'll be in my 70s. It's not such a bad thing, but can I protect them? Can I do that?
Right.
You
All
know,
right.
my life hasn't been geared to set up a way to do that. So honestly, I would be creating more harm to people and to this world by creating a family
Okay.
in
Let's
that way.
let's
I can't do it. I just can't.
all right. So and today you understand homosexuality and its promotion and heavy propagandization as eugenics, correct?
Oh, absolutely, eugenics and delusional. You know, so
All right. What do you
yeah. They're after the hang on, ding ding ding, Huxleyan,
Brave New World?
Brave New World. The new movie at the moment that's describing this is The Giver. It's got Meryl Streep, one of the Bridges brothers, and basically the whole society has to drug themselves, right? So they don't relate to their emotions, so they can't connect psychically to each other. And the giver, you know, or the receiver of the memories, eventually can't deal with the fact that it's shut off and has to change this and bring it all back to everybody. It's essentially what you're doing, Jan. You're
So
bringing back our true emotions back and the reality of life back to everybody.
all right. So now, and this is struck you the other day in the pre-call, and so I'm going to bring it up again because it's an important issue. In a straight relationship, you have something very important that is the pair bonding that happens between man and woman. In Christian relationships, this is why, you know, them both being virgins is so important, so that you have that lifelong bond. And each sexual partner, they actually find, you know, the DNA of every sexual partner a woman has had in her brain. And of course, you know, disinformation websites like Snopes and things like that will play this whole issue down because they're pushing that you know, this whole agenda out there as eugenics today. And I've shown the Jaffa memo on the website, which can be found in the brain database under Planned Parenthood. But, you know, so they're promoting all of that out there. But, you know, so what happens, and you've had a couple of days to consider this since I brought it up the other day, you know, so you've had several hundred male partners. Now, what is the situation with the pair bonding? Now, you know, so, and I'm going to say this directly, you know, straight people, and there's been studies on this as well, can typically identify a homosexual just by seeing one or both of their eyes or their lips. And so, you know, and we've all heard the term queer eye. What is happening? I suspect what is happening is that the DNA or that the pair bonding actually shows up in the eyes, and that's why we can see it. But what do you think of the pair bonding?
Oh, fascinating pair bonding. And it's just showing that science is still just validating the Bible, constantly validating the Bible and the way of life. Um, that study should be in our Christian reading room. I'm pretty sure of it. I'm going to nick down there later on and have a little looky. We've got a little library here in Northcote that is a Christian reading library. So I'll go check that down there and see if there's a science reading library. Sorry, Christian
All
science
right.
reading library.
And I've got seven more things to get through. So, you know, so gay pride. So pride is obviously one of the seven deadly sins. Homosexuality is one of the sins of the Bible. So you put the two together, gay pride. What can you say on that?
Well, double whammy on sin, isn't it? You just have to look at, like, if you saw gay pride, just a bunch of guys walking in a jumper and shirt, similar to me, or a shirt similar to yourself, down the street, just saying, we want acceptance. We don't want to be killed. We don't want to be bashed. You know, when one of us dies, we want to leave the rest to our significant other, and we don't want that contested by anybody. That's all I see when the people in Pride March, that's what they want to convey. But what I get to see is this Mardi Gras sex slut stuff shoved in your face. And then they expect the community to accept this. You know, it's almost like setting ourselves up to fail if we want to create a separate community, you know, with acceptance, because, yeah, it just doesn't work. And you're right. Pride, a sin. Homosexuality. I'm not entirely sure if homosexuality itself, aspects of it, are a sin. That maybe partaking of homosexuality, going after a husband, a father, a married man is really abhorrent to me as well. I made the
And
mistake of
we'll
doing
get
that
into
once.
the Bible quotes on that here in a moment that actually discuss that directly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what can you say about gay marriage as a tool to legitimize pedophilia and other even more degenerate behavior? And thank you, by the way, for those of you who've thrown up donations. And by the way, make sure you support Caleb too, mickcaleb@gmail.com. And, you know,
Yeah,
Caleb's been,
support both.
yeah. And Removing Zog says homosexuality is the dumb way to look at it, meaning it is the limited human view. How about taking a larger view? Look at all of nature. You will find that homosexuality exists throughout. There is some, and usually, and you know, we've talked about this before, is population control in certain species. It's really, you know, see, humans are not animals, and that's where Removing Zog is wrong. Humans, contrary to other species, have something called agency, and that's the right to choose correct behavior that goes along with natural law versus
May I just
against it.
interrupt there for a second? With
Sure.
natural law, right? Okay, we can see homosexuality in the natural world, but being Christians, being given the gift of thought and intelligence, and we're trying to bring ourselves up out of base animalistic mentality.
Right.
Why
What's
do we
called the
keep falling
natural
back to it
man. Right.
and partaking of it when we are actually trying to separate? Even our science and our hygiene is taking us out of the natural world, you know. So yeah.
Well, some religions, you know, especially Christianity, they call it, you know, you fall into the state of being a natural man, which is the totally fallen state where you're basically, you know, just, you know, doing everything for pleasure. You don't think long term or survivability or, you know, 7 generations out, etc. So,
Well, the creature God decided to put logos into, they're basically us without the logos, then, aren't they? The base
exactly.
self.
You know, and so people, these people who don't understand this stuff and don't understand living in truth and logos and trying to follow natural law and living in what is obviously a direction towards truth, they'll throw out comments like, well, you know, animals do it, you know, so therefore we should too. Or, and they'll cite some bogus manufactured history out of the Scaligerine chronology. Well, you know, Greeks were into homosexuality and pedophilia, therefore it's okay, which is actually an appeal to tradition fallacy, not to mention appeal to fake history fallacy. You know, so that's a whole other issue. But, you know, and that was actually one of my next comments, fake history and Dionysus and, the flood of homosexuals in the Crusades. Did you want to touch on that, Caleb, or can you mention either one of you want to go into that? I think.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
just briefly, what I've come to understand about history is that this bacchanalian cult that we've discussed in the past that gave into their pleasures. They fell when you think of it like you're climbing up a ladder of consciousness. You're growing your consciousness, you're becoming closer to truth, you're removing contradiction, you're becoming a better person. These things have direct consequences in your own life, and direct benefits if you don't do these things, like that whole list that I just read. Obviously nobody would argue that those are good things. So even if you don't believe specifically in some of the appeals that you get, all the logical fallacies that we get about history, appeals to emotion and all these things, if you don't even have to believe in the Bible scriptures that we're going to read, you can see it directly relating to the world around you. So of course this bacchanalian cult that gave into their addictions is really what they did. They got addicted to their sent their pleasure-based senses, right? So obviously that led to something very bad in history. So I don't know why you would go, oh, okay, well, these people did it, so it's okay. Well, in history, the reason that the fall happened, this huge giant wave of disease came from this. Dionysian Bacchanalian cult spread this giant amount of disease because they were just sleeping with each other. And I would say that there is definitely correlation to a lot of the sexual promiscuous acts and how many sexual partners you have and the diseases that that there's a direct relationship between that. So if you go out and you do these things, we're not just saying don't do it because it's bad. You can see that it's bad because it gives you gonorrhea, syphilis, HIV, all these different things. Plus, you're never going to get that which is the highest form of living, which is creating another human life, right? So anyways, when you look back in history, and I'm talking a lot about the stuff that I've learned from flamenco, because a lot of the traditional history that you read, if you look deep enough into it, you'll find out that a lot of it is just bogus.
Oh yeah,
conflated lines.
Miles Mathis, the disinfo boy, in my opinion anyway, put out a 3-page hit piece against flamenco this week. I didn't read it. He cites Morozov. Therefore it's wrong. That's the extent of his vacuous argument. It's like he says, I'm a disinfo agent because somebody donated this microphone, and because Chris Mayville, who is in the Logos Roundtable with us, does such a good job with the graphics. I mean, the guy is just... Oh, but he's a victim of attackers, and never mind, he does most of the attacks and isn't smart enough to read the books he attacks. Now, at least in my opinion, excuse me. Removing Zug says, locked out of the chat by someone, not just animals. Look at insects. We already explained this. We have the ability of agency to choose right behavior. Are you doing degenerate, iniquitous behavior that spreads disease and is going to end your family tree? Or are you doing behavior that's going to ensure the survivability of your family for the next 7 generations out? If you're citing that animals and insects have gay sex and therefore you should, that's not a proper argument. Again, humans have agency. Are you living to be the natural man or the upright man? You have the choice. And this is why so much of this is about agency. It's about the decision. And we should go into the question of what is sex. Do you want to address that, Mark? Unfortunately,
gratification.
Unfortunately,
pure and simple gratification.
Gratification for you, it is.
Yeah.
And for us, it's also.
Also, yeah, it is. All right, sex, primarily the sexual act of copulating, is to make babies, essentially. And it takes place
to
at a
create
certain
life.
period of time to create life, to procreate. And essentially, when you see this, I mean, you don't see most primate species copulating every 5 minutes. The only one you see is bonobos, and it's the only one. And I don't see them.
And the hippies and the Terrence McKenna fans are ever so ready to cite the bonobos, And I haven't looked into it. I think I found somewhere that information was bogus too. But, I've heard that stuff. So would you agree that the satanic upper echelons of society are these, pedovores at stuff, things like that, running things?
Yeah, not just pedophiles, but there's so much evil out there being perpetrated by these people. And the real funny thing is that it's not a huge collective. The amount of people that are perpetrating this are actually quite small. It doesn't take a great deal. Look at the size of the HIV virus, for example. It's very small. It's very tiny. It's just, and it can sneak in and get in there. And all it has to do is just infect, 1, maybe 2, in the body. And then it can start producing more of itself and throwing it out there to even infect more of the system. And then once that system's completely brought down, then it leaves it open for all this other crap to come in to bring it down. It doesn't bring it down itself. It will, so all this conflated bad direction, the unhealthy stuff that we're being given and told to now balance and bring this into our lives and move forward with it. It's just like that. It's breaking us.
Now, I just want to say that YouTube, because of the subject matter tonight, demonetized this episode before we even got started, just for you speaking out against the agenda that, they promote. So I definitely
Good. I didn't want it monetized. I don't want any advertising bastards to make money
here's
from
the
this.
thing is we need to be able to fund the research. So we ask people, it does help fund the research, anything that we
Agreed.
can get.
Yeah.
So anybody who can, throw up a super chat or help support the show, we greatly appreciate it. Also, donate to Caleb directly at mick.caleb@gmail.com. And then one more question here, and then I want to get into the Bible quotes, and we'll wrap it up. But are you willing to admit that homosexuality is a disorder?
Okay, this is where I'll get ribbed. Okay, am I ready to stand in the actual firing line for it? Is it a disorder? From my perspective, it can be pushed into being completely disorderly and disrupt everything. For example, it's now disrupting the attempted healing of the church with its congregation over this pedophilic issue. And all that sort of stuff. It's very. It's like we all suffer from memeitis. Me too. Look at me. It's like, yeah, like I said, I'm trying to find the right words to step through this honorably without putting my foot into a bear trap. Because for me, I've still got to live with a lot of people. I've got to communicate with them and deal with them. And if they don't want to do that anymore, then I better be comfortable with walking alone, which I am quite comfortable doing anyway. I'm not truly alone. I have my congregation here that are supporting me. I have a partner and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it is a sort of disorder as far as I can come at it without persecuting people for being this way. I don't want to do that. I can see it is so against the natural law as far as creating a family and keeping the family strong. We can be used to even strengthen the family as long as we don't act on our inclinations. For example, I know somebody that is raising their grandnieces or fostering them to keep them in the family. Otherwise, they would have been scattered to the winds, broken up, the two sisters broken up and gone to other places and probably been even harmed even more. This way, with their uncle, who also identifies himself like myself, can keep them in the family and keep them connected to their broader generational family.
As long as the behavior is limited and straight, and he does, actual parenting.
And it doesn't affect the parenting aspect of it, absolutely. Absolutely. And these girls will be with their parents. They will know their parents. They will just know that their parents were inadequate of supplying the stability at that time they were born. For me, I'm glad that he's doing that. I really am. I'm glad that their family is being kept whole by his sacrifice. He could go out there and fall directly into this homosexual lifestyle and, be like that, but he's not. He's, stepping it up and saying, well, okay, I will raise them for you.
Right.
I will help you do this. There's honor in our condition, right? And it's the way we act. It's the sexual deviation. Do you want to be a sexual deviant, and get all that sexual gratification? What is it going to bring you throughout your life?
Well,
is it going to bring you
Well, the Bible shows, explains that they shall know you by your fruit. If your fruit are your children and your family, they shall know you by them. How do your children behave, etc.? If your fruit from your sexual acts is disease and degeneration, they shall know you by your acts. Correct? So
yeah, but we have to try and fix that too. You can be aware that you brought a situation just by creating, like I said before.
And those children will still have potential problems without a proper mother figure in the household as well.
Yeah, their mother figure was a negative mother figure.
Well, I mean,
I'm sorry to say.
well, what I'm saying is, okay, so yeah, this homosexual is raising the children, doing the best job he can, but the children really need proper male and female role models.
Well, they've
So
got it from the family. They really do have it from the family, and they do have strong, proper masculine roles to see. They do have strong, proper feminine roles to see. They're not getting that. It's just that their own parents can't actually raise them right
sure,
now.
I understand that. I'm just saying, any effort or all efforts should be made to make sure that they have, a solid woman role model along with a male role model who isn't acting in any way toward sexual deviancy in front of the children.
And in a way, by parents giving their children over to community and school and all that sort of stuff, you have to make sure that that's doing the same thing as well, so that they're getting
Absolutely.
both healthy male and female role models at school too.
If you're not homeschooling them or putting them in a private
Yeah.
school or something where they get proper, I mean, the public schools.
It's rare. Homeschooling's rare today.
And Marc,
especially here.
one of the other people in the roundtable, he is a school teacher, and he's obviously not here tonight. But it's all the proper balance, and having those proper role models. But we eventually had to pull our son out of the public school system because of all of the degeneracy that they were promoting. So what I want to get into is homosexuality in the Bible. So here is from Genesis 19 forward. And there came two angels to Sodom at even, and Lot, or evening, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, Behold, now my lords, in turn, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early, and go your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night. And he, careful of the noise there; it's pretty distracting. And
Sorry.
And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and entered into his house. And he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. And by the way, I should say thanks to Holly for gathering these citations tonight. Before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot, and said unto him, We are the men which came, or where are the men which came into thee this night? Bring them to us, that we may know them. Of course, that's to know in the biblical sense. And Lot went out the door unto them, shut the door after him, and said, I pray to you, brethren, do not so wickedly. And then Leviticus 18. This is 18:21 forward. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Moloch, neither shalt you profane the name of thy God. I am the Lord. Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is abomination. Neither shall you lie with any beast to defile thyself therewith. Okay, and this is all because of living in truth and natural law. And when we see this, and when we see the disease and the fruits thereof, we can understand why these things are. Neither shall any woman...
So sleeping with men... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Neither shall any woman stand before a beast and lie down thereto. It is confusion. So those who fornicate with dogs, horses, whatever. Defile not yourselves in any of these things. For in all these the nations are defiled, which I cast out before you. And the land is defiled. Therefore I do not visit the iniquity thereof upon it, and the land itself vomited out her inhabitants. Ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations. Neither shall any of your own nations, nor any stranger that sojourneth among you. And nation, as Robert Rowe pointed out on the show in the past, is another word for family. And so this is also important to understand. And for these abominations have the men of the land done, which were before you, and the land is defiled. That the land spew not you out also when you defiled it, as it spewed out the nations that were before you. Whosoever shall commit any of these abominations, even the souls that commit them, shall be cut off from among their people. So, people who do this behavior, they're segregated, they're considered, not part of the normal people, just like we were discussing with vampires. And furthermore, you end up being cut off because of the eugenics factor, and you not having the fruit of, your offspring there, so therefore it's sort of damnation. And then Romans 1, and this is 22 forward. So this is going to the New Testament. And let me see. So professing themselves to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of uncorruptible God into the image made like to corruptible man, and to the birds, and to four-footed beasts, and to creeping things. Wherefore God gave them up to uncleanliness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves. So again, this is talking about agency, and we have the choice not to act like the beasts and the creeping things. And so continuing here, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the women, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error, which was met. So again, the Bible is very clear that this stuff is antithetical to natural law and to, the preferences of God and that which is righteous.
Explicitly clear.
Yep. And continuing on with the last citation of Romans 1, this is Romans 1:28. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. Okay, so, it's like, okay, he gives them up to that because it's about the agency. It's about the choice. And that's what is so key and important to this thing, and what separates men from being able to choose logos and living in truth and living in harmony with nature versus going against it and doing, being degenerate, etc. This is what separates us, human beings from animals, is the ability to have agency, to choose. And so this is 1 Corinthians 9. I might be missing part of the citation there. It's probably upstairs on the other computer. I apologize. And I had the citations. Hold on a second. Let me just see if I can grab it off the other computer there. Sorry, folks. Almost there.
I was only in Corinthians not long.
Hold on a second. I'm just pulling up the exact citation here. I found the document. I'm just opening it. Okay, open read only. Hopefully it gives me the exact citation. Nope, I didn't save it when I corrected the errors upstairs. All right, so this is in 1 Timothy. I think it was 5 or 9. Holly would know. But anyway, it says, "But we know that the law is good if man use it lawfully, knowing this, that the law..." Oh, shoot, and I didn't read the 1 Corinthians one. Let me back up a second. I got ahead of myself. "Know ye not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of God? Be not deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor abusers of themselves with mankind, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners shall inherit the kingdom of God." That's because these are all based on deception, on things that will destroy us and hurt us if we don't live in truth. So you don't cheat on your wife. That causes strife. You don't, dress as, the opposite sex or whatever. You don't go around and do these things because it's not in truth. It's living contrary to natural law and truth. And then obviously if you're going around a drunkard and a reviler and extorting people and, thieving and stuff like this, fornicating, all of that stuff, is against natural law. So it comes back to bite you eventually if you partake in that type of behavior for too long. And then going on to 1 Timothy, again, apologies for missing the full citations on these couple. But we know that the law is good if man use it lawfully, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and the disobedient. So those who live in truth and natural law don't need the law because they're already living in truth and natural law. The law for those anarchists out there are for those who don't follow in the law. And of course, we're talking about the natural law, the laws of God, not the judicial
legislative law of man.
Well,
the legislative law of man, yeah.
The judicial system, the Judean law, the Jewish law, etc. Knowing this, that law is made for the righteous man, but for the lawless man and the disobedient, for the ungodly and his sinners, for the unholy and profane, for the murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers and manslayers. And let's see, it goes on, for whoremongers, and that's male sex workers. I looked into that. For them that defile themselves with mankind, and for man-stealers. And this comment, I looked it up, and it said, foot, and also related it to the stool, or, and if you think of the word stool, that's also another word for feces, and you sit, on your behind. For the liars, for the perjured persons, and if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine, which is just living in truth, constantly being in truth. That's how you know what is a true doctrine or not. Does it deal with living in truth and living as a righteous person? Or does it promote degeneracy, confusion, the natural man, free love, free sex, drugs, rock and roll, all that sort of stuff? And then Deuteronomy, and this is the last one. This is Deuteronomy 22:5. The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth to the man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment. For all that do so are abomination unto the Lord thy God. So if you're doing that, you're lying, you're putting on a lie. If you're a woman and you're dressing as a man, if you're, what's called a bull dyke here, and you're dressing on a man, you're not being honest. If you're a man dressing as a woman, and in fact, there was a recent case where a transvestite man was put into a women's prison, no joke, and then proceeded to rape and do things to the women in the prison. I'm just trying to find the news article here. I apologize if I can find it.
Well, that's pretty twisted.
Yeah, here it is right here. So this is the New York Post. So this person is put in a women's prison and then sexually assaults the women in the prison, and it's like, and this article is so ridiculous. It says she rubbed her penis on some of the other inmates and stuff. It's like
she rubbed her penis.
This is the cognitive dissonance and, nonsense of the liberals who, she and her penis. I mean, this is the kind of, disconnect. I mean, you have to lie, and lie some more to spread this kind of stuff. So how does a she have a penis? Well, if it has a penis, it's a man, and it goes into a male prison. If it still wants to be a man, it's probably, going to be the jailhouse bitch. So, that's how it goes, So anyway, sorry to be, go off on that tangent, but, that's all I have for the notes for all of that, Mark. So do you have any comments that you want to add to that?
Only with the caveat of men dressing as women, when they make it a lifestyle to live that way because they're being transgender, that's their choice. But there is also the thespian side of things where, actors, at one point in time, there was men that could only, were only allowed to be actors. And so they had to wear women's dresses to portray the women's roles.
Well, and that
so
was...
We're not speaking to that, are we?
Well, and that was a whole other issue, and you're talking about Hollywood and all of that. That's, who promotes all of this degeneracy and is run by this pedovore, underground cult and et cetera as well. But, so did you have anything to say about the Bible citations there? As a Christian man, because
as a Christian man, speaking from a Christian man's point of view, that is reading the Bible for the pathway, for the light to light up the way, it's quite explicit on what it means. And when we look at it scientifically as well as spiritually, they join up. They validate each other. To be in a homosexual sort of way and to act on it, like with copious amounts of butt sex and, walking around, mincing around like you're a girl and all that sort of stuff, even if it's in jest and all that sort of stuff, can be taken too far, way, way, way too far. But if you find yourself in this way and you're not acting on it and you just want to walk forward, I'm not sure. I haven't actually seen how that's actually dealt with in the Bible. How do they deal with it other than put us to death? I don't know.
I mean, but how, in your opinion, okay, so you can see the contradiction about living in truth and you still identify as a homosexual. So how do you, and I give you great applause for standing up and being able to do this show tonight, by the way, because this has taken, extreme courage on your part to do this. But is there thought on your part to take the last steps to try to totally remove yourself from that behavior?
It's to not act on that behavior, essentially. That's the only thing that we as individuals can do. It's all up to us. It falls down onto the individual.
The agency.
And individuals, the agency, and those of us that want to join together and help each other do that. But like I said earlier, if there was an honourable way for me to move forward out of that in a family way, I would take it, absolutely. How am I going to move forward as a Christian man? The only thing I can do is just to basically not act on impulse at all whatsoever in relation to that.
What about even lying with another man at all?
What, sexually?
Well, I mean, it says even lie with a man. Yeah.
Oh, well, that means that people who go camping together and lie next to each other in the tents and all that sort of stuff could be construed as being, that's being a bit too literal.
Well, but is going as far into the truth, into godliness that you can go? Is that really pushing it too far, or is that just going to truth and logos?
Well, to be truthful, then I would have to turn around and become 100% celibate, and
right,
and that's the way it would go. And you can still be celibate and still be, have relationships with people, So that's probably the path that is for me. I don't know. I'd like to forge it somewhat better.
Well, we applaud you coming this far. You're the first person that I've ever come across willing to stand up and do this. I'm going to pass it back over to Caleb for a moment. Caleb's been quiet over there for a bit.
Yeah. I commend you too for standing up and putting your face out there. I know it's rough, and it's a good thing that you're doing it. It's a big deal.
Yeah,
but,
I don't like people who talk like this and don't put their face out there or even their real name or whatever. There's so many so-called truthers out there that are speaking all this sort of stuff, but you never see their face, and they're all so they're shill trolls. I'm not interested in following those. You have to be honest. You have to be able to stand up and show your face. And if I'm going to cop a beating for this, well, I've cop beatings for much less. So,
But I guess the point of, the question really is that you want to do as best as you can to get to the point where you're speaking and living in truth. We all have, nobody's perfect. We're all doing our best to try to get closer and closer and closer to that. And, we shouldn't necessarily get down on each other is hard for certain things. But as long as we're all doing our best and trying, I think that's the biggest part of it. But as far as one question I had for you, so would you say that so solutions for a lot of these problems, I'm wondering if the promotion of the family unit, and a strong shift in society toward high investment in parenting is probably one of the best things we can do to stop a lot of these issues from happening. We don't want to see these people committing suicide and getting diseases and getting depressed and having eating disorders and all these negative things. So the best, I think, way this is all out of good faith. We're trying to put this information out, not as like, a hateful thing, but people need to hear the truth, right? I mean, that's the whole point. So realistically, what this is all about is removing lies and removing contradictions. And I don't know if it's possible to be, a practicing homosexual and also live in truth, because you're kind of lying to yourself. And I don't have a problem with the people per se and the decision. I have a problem with the decisions they make that are lies, and they're lying to themselves and each other. So somebody like you that comes forward and is like, look, I'm interested in the truth as well, and I'm willing to do whatever I gotta do to get to that point. And you're taking a huge 180-degree turn, which is it's a big deal to all of us to hear. We don't hear this very often, and it's very commendable to finally hear a lot of the truth, because most of the time, even if I just ask questions to people, they turn it around as if it's an attack. They get very defensive about these things. So having these conversations is very difficult. And all the arguments I get, not all, I shouldn't say all, many of the arguments that I get are all appeals to emotion. They're when somebody can't win an argument based on reason and evidence and speaking, in those terms, they always switch to logical fallacies. And some of the main ones I usually get are appeals to emotion. Well, we should feel bad for people. Therefore,
it's the primary one. The appeal to emotion is the primary appeal all the time. And then it's appeal to false facts, appeal to this, appeal to that, It goes on and on and on like that. Yeah. Now, in relation to structuring and getting back to core family and recreating something that can bring this back properly, and generational core families, essentially, the bigger the generation and the wider it is, the more beneficial it is for everybody too. So, shrinking ourselves down to just these little small pebble-sized things that can be flicked off quite easily is not the way to go. You were talking the other day, and I'm just going to have to bring this up, the Rh factors in blood, right? And we needing to get a blood test for procreation to ensure that we don't have to go through the horrors of birth defects, right? We're not doing that anymore. We don't do that anymore at all. It's very rare you hear somebody that's gone out before they get married, two virgins coming together, making sure their blood is compatible so that their children are fine when they breed, right? We don't do that anymore. It's all potluck. And then we're supposed to feel like, oh, what's wrong with us? We're a defected species. We need all this medication. We need this, that, and all the rest of it, when it could have been avoided with the most simplest of blood tests, to make sure that the different Rh factors, et cetera, are compatible for healthy life. We don't do that. There's another aspect on what to do. And even in doing this may even prevent this made homosexual over natural homosexual thing clear up as well. Well, for example, when you change your diet and you don't eat the junk anymore and you just go back to the natural healthy diet, your body heals really quickly. So if we can go back to the natural healthy family ways, maybe our societies and things will heal just as rapidly.
Yeah. Well said. So one thing that I wanted to bring up was just another solution, because look, I think we can admit here that this current situation that we have where it's being promoted as a normal thing, the normalization of the LGBTQ whatever is being promoted as a normal thing. I think we can safely say that this is a failed experiment. This experiment is failing horribly, and we need to do something because the wheels have fallen off the cart, so to speak.
As far as the entertainment industry and the mainstream media are going, no, this is not failed, and they're pushing. You really did see it. For example, there's a lesbian girl, gender fluid girl by the name of Ruby Rose, I think, actress, model here in Australia, landed a part on one of the Marvel or DC comic things as Catwoman.
And we need to wrap it up here really quickly. We're at 2 hours and 15 minutes, so we need to keep it short.
Okay, I'll just sum this up. Even the Jewish community are ragging on this actress for not being Jewish, even though she's lesbian and fits that part of it, right, for not being in their system. So this whole game that we're being given and all that sort of stuff from the media and all that sort of stuff is not reality. It really isn't. And nobody wants to talk reality anymore.
Everybody's into this primacy of consciousness, quantum physics nonsense.
Exactly.
For those of you in the audience who still believe in quantum physics, it's a fairy tale. You really need to give it up. I did shows all the way back in 2011 exposing it. Obviously there's hit pieces out there for me doing that show years ago. But if you're intelligent enough to study the trivium, go through the Leonard Peikoff stuff, and then go through all of the David Harriman stuff, his 10-hour lecture series, including the shows that I did with him, you'll see clearly that the stuff is a fraud, and you can give it up and let it go and move on. It's just, it's mathemagic. It's a mathematical religion. And, once you get it, you can see that it's just a trick to get you to believe that reality isn't real. And if you believe that reality isn't real, then you believe that truth doesn't exist. And if you believe that truth doesn't exist, then you're actually denying that God exists, because it breaks down simply. God is truth, or truth is God. The antithesis of that, Satan is the father of all lies. So if you reject truth as God or Logos, you're automatically accepting Satanism. You're denying Logos, like the Jews denied Logos. That's what a Jew is someone who denies Logos, or that truth is God. I see these people ignorantly commenting that the Bible needs to be retested and redone because, they've never read it before, or they haven't read it since they were 6 or 7, and they don't get that it's about living in truth. So they post all of these, extremely ignorant comments. First, you have to sit down and read it before you can say that it needs fixing. And once you get that it's about living in truth and what happens when you fall and do all of this degenerate, iniquitous behavior, then you begin to see it. And Mark is a living example of that. You fell into the iniquitous behavior, and you were punished for it by contracting HIV and having your family tree cut off. Isn't that correct?
Mm-hmm. Essentially, all that they'll like to say that HIV wasn't sort of like a struck by God type event, but it's a learning curve. I mean, okay, God put HIV down here, but there's also the medication that will prevent me from dying, right? People on the planet are actually naturally immune to HIV, right? Probably about
short
1%
version. We got to
us.
wrap it up here.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just saying, just keep it short because we need to wrap it up now. We're 2 hours and 20 minutes in nearly. All right. So,
Wow.
Caleb, why don't you give out your information so people can support you directly?
Yeah, it's mick.caleb@gmail.com, and put it in the chat for you. I also have a Bitcoin address if you need that. Email me. And the last thing that I'll say before we wrap this up is, guys, get out there and tell everybody to get off of birth control. You don't want your daughters, your mothers, anybody, your wives, anybody on birth control.
Who created the term? Okay, who created the term the pill? Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I thought we were going to get through an episode without mentioning it, but one of you guys know?
Huxley. Ding, 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 ding. Huxley Esalen.
Aldous Huxley created the term the pill. Yes, indeed, it is eugenics. So get off of that stuff. Thanks for mentioning that, Caleb. Also, Steven Sorensen needs a computer. Those of you who can throw Steven some donations, that's why he wasn't on tonight, because his computer wasn't working. He couldn't get it up to join us. Steven, if you would please post your donate and information button in there so that you can be on next week and whatnot. That would be helpful. I always forget what it is if you post it quickly. He says paypal.me/President Trip is his PayPal information. So please support him so he can get a new computer going so that we don't have any snafus happening right before the show starts. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Thank you for those to those who supported the show tonight and supported Caleb and Steven. Thanks to Marc Jantzen for coming on tonight and, you know, having the bravery to stand up and tell the truth. I applaud you for that. You know, clearly you and I don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but, you know, for obvious reasons. But nonetheless, I applaud you, and may God bless you for standing up and fighting for the truth. And may you, you know, see your way through.
Thank you. And may your families, you know, grow and prosper.
Thank you for that. God bless.
God bless.
Bye, everybody.